We are now recording. All right, I would like to welcome my guest today. Her name is Kerrie Leonard. I've had the pleasure of working with Kerrie for the last 9 months. She has been interning with BioGirls and helping us develop our teen program that we are hoping to launch in 2022. Kerrie has some impressive credentials. As I mentioned, she's a PhD student at North Dakota State University studying developmental science. She works in the Healthy Eating and Body Image Lab. And her master's thesis was on social media effects on body image in youth. So welcome, Kerrie.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So today's topic is all around social media. And I thought, who better to talk about it than you, having researched it for your master's thesis. I'm just going to start by an observation. I mean, body image issues for our young girls and our teen girls are not a new thing. You know, they've been around for a long time. Why do females struggle so much with body image issues?
Yeah, they are definitely not a new problem. And so I would say from more of maybe like a feminist standpoint, I'd say females struggle because of extreme societal pressures to uphold really specific beauty and body ideals. And they struggle because these ideals are totally unattainable, naturally anyway. And also they can be conflicting and they change over time. So it's really hard to keep up with, for thinking about right now, a newer body ideal is this like thick, slim look where it's like you're slim in the right places, such as like your waist, but you're thick with like your breasts and your butt. How impossible is that to actually attain naturally, right?
Right.
And there's the thin ideal, which has been prevailing for a really long time, of just extreme thinness all over. And that's also really unattainable. But society puts these pressures on women, also girls. Young girls also struggle with body image too. And also females, or at least in American society, they're valued for their looks more than their internal qualities generally. And yeah, so that's kind of like a feminist, I guess, maybe standpoint of why females struggle. And most people do. The rates of body dissatisfaction are really high. And even girls as young as 6 years old have been found to have, issues with some part of their bodies, some dissatisfaction. And what's really interesting too is that it's so prevalent and it affects everyone, even the like pretty girls, like girls you think are so beautiful and you're like, why would they ever be unhappy? They're gorgeous. I think they're beautiful. And I think back to my camp counselor days. I used to be a camp counselor at a summer camp and I worked with a wide range of girls, but I did work with some 7th graders. And I think about this one girl who I thought was so beautiful. She was so cute. And she did not have positive body image. And I don't remember specifically what she said because it was so many years ago, but she would make little comments about, being unhappy with her body or saying she's ugly or something like that. And I used to be like, oh my gosh, no, I don't think that at all. How can you think that?
Everyone else probably wanted to look like her.
Exactly, right? And so what's interesting is that we may think it's unbelievable that pretty girls also deal with body image issues. But if you think about it, we praise them as a society. We praise them for their looks. And so they're going to attach it to their worth. Mm-hmm. And they're going to struggle to maintain those impossible beauty and body ideals. So when you like step back and think about it, pretty girls might struggle with body image even more than someone who maybe wasn't praised and valued for their looks as much. So, yeah.
That's fascinating. I've never thought about it in that way, and
right?
that kind of ties into some of the things that we've been researching around perfectionism. Mm-hmm. And, even though you are seen as the pretty girl, it's still not perfect enough, or you have to uphold that. So how is that going to happen? And I can assume or guess that then leads to some issues down the road, which we'll talk about. But how have you seen body image issues in teens impacted by social media?
Yeah. So social media is a new threat, I would say, to body image. Body image issues have been around, forever, since the beginning of time. Girls and women have been unhappy with their bodies and also unhappy at high rates. But it's different now with social media. Social media adds this new layer and it amplifies these problems. So, you could say body image issues have like worsened or deepened because of this new layer. And so the problems with social media is that, there's social comparison happening on social media. There's filters, photo editing to alter the way you look. And there's also a new phenomenon, which is what my thesis was on, called body challenges, which can also be harmful to body image too. So things like the Kylie Jenner lip challenge, which went viral a few years ago. And yeah, social media plays a really huge role because, as we know, teens have easy access to social media and they use it daily. And so it poses a lot of threats. Definitely.
I think I just read a stat that girls see on average, I think it was something like 5,000 messages a day about their appearance. And,
Wow.
when you think about that in the context of social media, it's not just the magazine cover from like when I was a child. It's these edited images on social media. Again, when you think about what girls are striving for, they're comparing themselves to something that's not even real. It's an edited image. And so like you talked about like the norms or the goals that some girls are striving for, not even real. So definitely not attainable.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. With that statistic, there's increased exposure to social media because things are uploaded constantly, like 24/7 things are uploaded. And it's also highly visual too, photos and videos. So that sets up people, to be vulnerable because of those things. So yeah, that's a really interesting statistic.
Yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
I read another one, and I meant to mention it before, but 98% of girls feel pressured to look a certain way. And I can just imagine that social media, like you said, amplifies that impact on girls. When they're seeing that many messages, they're constantly thinking, I need to change myself.
Yeah. And it's tricky too, because in terms of technology, things can be really subtle and you might not always realize that they edited something or used a filter that made them look better. It's sneaky and it's really hard to discern sometimes. So it's tough out there. And then also it's like often people too. So it makes it an easier target for comparison. I think girls and young women may be able to realize that like a fashion model is, not like them. And so they could be like, oh yeah, like I don't need to look like her, like she's a fashion model. But when it's people, it can be way harder to, pick out that like, oh, maybe they used a filter or did some sort of editing. Cause yeah, it's people, it's regular people often on social media.
And on the flip side, I think social media has impacted girls in another way. And that is they are so afraid to post anything because they're worried that they're not going to get positive feedback or get enough likes or go viral. I mean, imagine that as a goal when you were 13. My goal is to go viral. But
yeah,
I read it was in a book that I was reading. Some girls spend hours adjusting their own images, playing with the lighting, trying to edit it to feel good enough to even post it out on social media. And not that I think girls need to post out on social media, but the fact of the matter is they're so unsatisfied with their own body image that they're really trying to control how others are viewing their physical appearance. And I mean, what a waste of time, if you ask me. Hours. And then they may not even post it at all, or if they don't get enough likes, they take it down.
Yeah, exactly. And even me, it takes me a while, because sometimes I'm like, what picture do I want to post? Like, what picture looks the best? So even me, who I would consider myself to be of like, decent body image and self-esteem, even me, I'm like, I gotta pick the best picture to post. And it might take a while just to even decide what picture I want to post.
So what are some warning signs? Like if parents are listening and they're like, well, what should I be watching for in terms of body image in my teen or preteen daughter? What are some warning signs with, poor body image?
I would say maybe the biggest one would be to pay attention to their self-talk. Pay attention to their comments. What are they saying about their bodies? Even if it's offhand, like even if it's not in a conversation, about their bodies, do they walk out the door and like look in the mirror and say like, oh, I look fat today? Pay attention to those little things that they say about themselves. Because I think that could be a big indicator of how they feel.
I have an example of that actually. A young girl that I know, I've heard her say, I'm going to get a nose job because my nose is too big. And she's not even fully developed yet. She hasn't finished her growth. And then, Mom, why did I get your legs? They're so short and stubby. And this young girl also is constantly looking at herself in the mirror and, adjusting her hair and looking at different angles.
Yeah, that's a behavioral thing to look out for, is them looking on the mirror. That makes me really sad to hear. But yeah, those comments are definitely warning signs. Another behavioral thing too is, do you notice, are they weighing themselves frequently if you have a scale at home? And that might be something you don't always catch. But perhaps you do catch them weighing themselves frequently, or maybe they talk about it again. Are they talking about their weight? Are they talking about that number on the scale? That could be another warning sign. Another one could be their eating behaviors. And that one could be even more tricky, because that could be indicative of an eating disorder, but it's always tied into body image as well. So if you pay attention to their eating behaviors, have they changed suddenly? Do they seem more preoccupied with food? Because then that might suggest they're dissatisfied with their bodies, because typically people will go on diets or develop disordered eating behaviors because they want to alter their size and shape. So that's another thing too to look out for.
How, in your experience and the research that you've done, I'm curious about clothing choices as well. I know another young girl who it can come off as maybe modesty, but because of the work I do, I feel it's more because she is dissatisfied with her body, and in terms of like always wearing oversized clothes, whether it's sweatpants or sweatshirts, in the summer will not take her shirt off to go swimming, is constantly covered up.
Yeah, that could also be a sign too, especially I would say if you notice that like sudden change, again, things that are like not typical. If a child has always liked baggy clothes and t-shirts and sweatpants, I wouldn't think anything of it. But if you notice that all of a sudden, like your daughter is like changing her style and like always wanting to wear extremely baggy clothes, then that could be a sign. That's something you would want to talk to, because maybe they do just like wearing that. So it depends, but that definitely could be a sign. Yeah.
Yeah. I think with everything that you've mentioned, is there a change? Is there a change from what it was maybe even pre-puberty? And now, they're talking about themselves differently or dressing differently. I also think there is a factor of external validation that comes into play too. Where are they seeking validation from? And, is it in middle school? Is it from boys? Are they constantly seeking attention and validation from the opposite sex, or, self-deprecating to try and get positive feedback from others? I think that's something that I've noticed just raising girls. That happens quite a bit when a girl is unhappy with her body.
Yeah. And developmentally, that makes sense as well, because once you reach adolescence, you care about your peers more than anything. So from that standpoint, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So how can parents talk to girls who are maybe struggling with body image issues, or maybe they've just noticed some of these changes?
I would say, talk with openness and honesty, and it doesn't need to be a big scary thing to talk about body image. And honestly, this may be really specific, but one thing I would think is important for parents to talk to their teens about would be honestly about puberty and weight gain and body changes. I feel like we always talk about like, oh yeah, your body changes during puberty. But I think what's less talked about is the weight gain aspect. It is normal, absolutely normal for teens to gain up to 50 pounds during puberty. And it's not just fat gained, it's your muscles, your bones, your organs even get larger. And that's just not talked about enough, even in science class. Like, even if I go back to, the sex ed, that we had in middle school and high school, in my memory, that wasn't really talked about. We talked about all the other changes during puberty more. But I think it's the weight gain that we need to talk about and normalize, because teens may feel very afraid to gain weight. And when they see that happening, they may think that there's something wrong, and there's not. So I think in conversations about body image between parents and children, that's a really big point to make. That weight gain is absolutely normal. Parents shouldn't be worried either. Some parents might also feel worried if they see weight gain. They should not. So I think, I know that's really specific, but I think that's one thing parents should talk about more. And even in class, maybe education could highlight that better.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I don't remember that ever being a part of the discussion.
Right.
And they're again coming back to these body ideals. Girls may have a number in their head, which is just not even realistic given their own genetics. And I think that's one of the struggles that, as parents and others who care about girls and want them to feel good about themselves, is that genetically there are things you can't change no matter what you do. And like the young girl that I was talking about with her short stubby legs, that's genetic, and how you can't change that. So to focus on your structure, you can't change it, and so that shouldn't be the focus. And so the weight gain goes hand in hand with that, I think, too. Is my niece is going to be probably 6 feet tall, and she's just a sturdy kid. There's nothing she can do to change that.
Yeah, height especially, I think, is mostly genetic, but weight also is impacted by genetics. I think that's a common misconception. And even, sorry, this might be a separate note, but talking about parents, I want to highlight that fathers are important too. I know we're talking about body image today, and I think people might commonly think like, oh, mothers, like it's a women's issue. Fathers have a big influence on their daughter's body image as well. So also, just as a side note, like fathers should also be promoting positive body image and be willing to like talk about it, as a side note.
Yeah. And I think it's important, whether it's a father or a mother. Again, it's just natural in our society to focus on appearance with girls when you're giving praise and feedback more so than anything else. And so, as a mother myself, trying to focus on things that are not appearance related is so critical. And in helping girls understand that that's not what determines their worth or their social value.
Absolutely. Yep. That is definitely one thing parents can do, is focus on other positive comments and praise, rather than focusing on like, oh, you're so beautiful. Say like, oh, you're so smart. Oh, you work so hard at this or that. That's definitely something parents can do.
Yeah. And I think, so I read another interesting article about 3 things that parents, well, not even just parents, society tends to focus on. And it's with girls primarily, it's performance, achievement, and physical appearance. And as it ties to social media, if you think about what parents are posting on social media, it's a picture of their daughter on, orchestra concert day, all dressed up, looking her best. And, or the day she, won the tennis match or whatever, it's focused
prom
on
night.
Those 3 things. And so then what is the girl going to figure out is important? Those 3 things, right? And so I think even parents can be aware of that in their own social media usage, not even just their feedback to their daughter, but their own social media usage, and focus on progress, focus on hard work, focus on, even things that didn't go well, and highlight some of those things too, so that, the focus is taken away from performance, achievement, and physical appearance and put on other things that are important.
Totally. I love that suggestion for parents. Yeah.
So what are 2 to 3 things parents can do regarding social media and its impact on their daughter's body image?
You said a good one. I love that suggestion. What you just said about what they post. I think first, parents need to address their anti-tech bias is a term I've heard from other experts. I think a lot of times parents might demonize social media or just blatantly say like, oh, I don't understand it. Like they should just get off it. Why do they have this if it's harmful? And I'm going to say as my first like ground suggestion to examine those biases and to kind of maybe reframe them and not demonize social media. Do not expect kids to get off of it if you say so. It's part of their life. The younger generations now, they grew up with it and they're digital natives. And I think older generations need to respect that and not demonize it and have this like anti-tech bias. And what they could do then, once they address that and realize social media isn't all that bad, it can be what you make of it. I would say, parents also engage and be open about it with their youth, their kids. You can encourage your kids to follow accounts that make them feel good about themselves. Co-surfing is a term in the literature of, looking at social media with your child, with your teen, and like engaging with it with them instead of thinking like separating yourself like, oh, I don't get social media, I don't understand it. Join in on it. I'm not saying you have to get your own account, but co-surf with your teen, ask them questions about it, find out what they're interested in on social media. But then don't demonize it. Don't try to dictate, how much time they're on it and all those things, because all those like restrictions, I don't think are good for teens' autonomy and agency. So just having this like open communication back and forth, empower them to, follow positive accounts, how to, empower them to critically think about what they see on social media, especially with influencers, and just have honest discussions. And, research shows that parents do influence teens' positive or negative activities on the internet. And so I think that's a misconception. I think people like to think that like teens are just doing their own thing. Parents don't have an influence on what they do on social media. And that's not true. So yeah, open, honest conversations, discussions, find out what they like. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's something tangible that parents can do on social media.
Totally agree on the not demonizing social media, because as you said, kids have grown up with it. It is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So if we as parents don't take the opportunity to help our kids objectively use social media, who is? And so I really love that suggestion. I actually have a very tangible suggestion as well. I can't take credit for it, but I've actually used it with my oldest daughter. And it's directly related to body image and some other issues that teens may face. So the recommendation again came from a book I was reading, and they suggested to do an audit of the accounts that that your teen is following, and ask them how the last 2 or 3 posts from that account made them feel. If it made them feel negatively or produce negative thoughts, unfollow the account. Secondly, teens have this social value aligned with this quantity of friends or followers on social media. But research has actually found that girls especially have a very biased view of other people's lives, especially when you don't know them or don't know them well. And so girls are thinking that other people are more satisfied and happier than they are when they're following them. And so the other part of the audit is to go through, and what I did with my daughter is went through and said, if you would not call them up on the phone or invite them over to your house, let's get rid of them. And by doing that and just keeping like more of a close circle of friends on social media, research proves that now they have a much healthier view of other people's lives because they know those people outside of social media. They know these people experience ups and downs just like they do. And so I thought that was a very helpful, helpful suggestion and something that we did. And it really did help my daughter in terms of her view of herself and others.
Yeah, I love that activity. It's a great activity to do and something parents and teens can do together easily.
And
I love that.
Let me tell you, my daughter had a hard time with it at first because she's like, well, they'll know I unfollowed them. And I said, so what?
You can mute them too. There is a new feature. If you don't want to like lose that friendship, if it is someone you know, perhaps, and you still don't like it, you can mute them. And so you just wouldn't see their stuff, but you could still be friends. So that's a nice feature too, at least on Instagram.
Yeah. Well, and I always tell my daughter, you think way more about what other people will think about your actions than they actually do think about you, so, we're always thinking everybody else is judging us or thinking about us. The fact of the matter is they're thinking about themselves that own way, nobody else. So, yeah. Okay. Well, anything else you'd like to add on the topic of social media and body image?
Yeah. We covered a lot of great stuff. I think the one last thing would be about, critically thinking about what you see and be wary of influencers. Oftentimes they're trying to sell you stuff and they really are to the max showing just a highlight reel. And I would suggest that There are a lot of body positive accounts. I wouldn't call them influencers. I feel like the true like body positive accounts wouldn't call themselves influencers. I would actually kind of like break that apart. They are out there. I follow a lot of great ones. So, you know, find those people to follow, and they can, you know, be a more positive influence on your self-esteem and body image altogether.
Do you have a couple that you'd recommend?
Yes, of course. Focusing more on like body image and, you know, nutrition. I really love the body image therapist. She is an Australian therapist, and I think her handle is just all together body image therapist. If you search it, she would pop up. Nadia Craddock is another one that I really love. Foodbody.peace. She's a dietitian, and so more on the nutrition side. I love her account as well. And there's some good accounts for parents too. So if parents, you know, would like on their own social media accounts to get more tips and help with body image, morelove.org is a good one. And Body Confident Mums, like with a U, are some great ones for parents. I follow them personally. And these are all Instagram accounts too. So those are some of my favorites that I follow personally.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Kerrie. I appreciate your insight and sharing your expertise with us today. You know, our goal is to help girls and be a resource for parents as well. And I think the information you shared today will be really helpful.
That is all I can ask for. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.